Thursday, September 6, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning, I want to prove to you that all the talk that a gold standard or gold are both passé or a barbarous relic are, in my opinion, a complete fallacy. And I'm going to look at Switzerland and the UK and show you how their economies have fared under two kinds of monetary regimes. I've got my Swiss cowbell I won at a golf competition back in 2001. So I've got my Swiss cowbell and the Union flag just to make it a little more interesting. Yeah, I'm going to go through figures, through the exchange rate, and talk a little bit about the Swiss franc, which I did a few days ago, and one of my viewers even said, and that's what made me want to do this video. One of my viewers said, I went to Switzerland to school in the 1960s, and I remember that a pound back then bought 12 Swiss francs. Well, nowadays it buys less than 1 franc 30. So go figure. Before, of course, I go into this subject, I'm going to look at the markets quickly this morning. It's 8:40 a.m. London time. Right now, spot gold is up $2 at 1198.30. The high has been 1200 and the low has been 1195. Silver is at 1420, up a cent. So still languishing, a little bit, underperforming gold, I would say. The Dow is down 42 at 25,932. S&P is down 3 or 0.1%. NASDAQ 100 futures down 8 points. So fairly quiet, steady markets at the moment. The currencies, the pound is a little stronger against the dollar, marginally, only 8 pips, 129.12. The euro is at 116.30. Also unchanged. The dollar is down against the yen, down 0.1% at 111.37. Let's see, dollar yuan, dollar is up 0.07%. So fairly quiet. Crude oil down 1/3% at 68.30. What about the emerging market currencies? Well, the Turkish lira this morning is at 661. So those emerging market currencies kind of stabilized for now. We'll still have to see what's going to happen. Still doesn't look good, the picture there. So now back to the Swiss franc and sterling and what has happened to both economies in the last 100 years. My video from 2 days ago about the Swiss franc talked about how the Swiss franc was basically on a gold standard until 2000. It was 40% backed by gold. And it's on Wikipedia here. It says, the Swiss franc has historically been considered a safe haven currency with virtually zero inflation and the legal requirement that a minimum of 40% be backed by gold reserves. However, this link to gold, which dates from the 1920s, was terminated on the 1st of May 2000. So we know, and the Swiss National Bank sold almost half of its gold reserves by 2005, I think, about over 1,290 tons. So, and we know now what the Swiss National Bank is doing. They're printing money like it's going out of style. They're trying to keep the Swiss franc weak versus the euro. They're buying even stocks. They're big holders of US, the FANG stocks. So I want to look at GDP because that's a good indicator of how an economy is doing. And I'm going to go all the way back to 1900. I'll start with the Swiss economy. I got the data here from Nation Master. Swiss GDP per capita in 1900 was $3,531. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the data there for the UK. For some reason, it wasn't there. But I did find eventually data for the UK, and it's from a study done by the OECD, GDP per capita since 1820. And then I went and found the GDP per capita in 1900. And it's got Western Europe there. And you can see I highlighted Great Britain, 4,492 dollars. So a lot higher than the Swiss GDP in 1900, and the highest one in Western Europe. And the UK, of course, was under a gold standard back in 1900 until 1914, unfortunately, when World War I started. So now we move forward, and I wanted to look at what happened during after World War II and the Bretton Woods, and I found some information here about the Swiss franc. So it says here that Switzerland decided to become part of the Bretton Woods system in 1945. The franc was pegged to the dollar at 4.375 francs to $1. And then I looked at the UK since 1940, and after the war, during the US, it says Britain adopted the new system in 1945, Bretton Woods, and £1 was $4.03. So the exchange rate there was above 17. So one pound could buy 17 francs back in 1945. So to the viewer who said that the pound could buy 12 in the 1960s, well, it could buy even more in 1945. So, and then I wanted to look at the GDP data, and I looked 1960, and you can see there that the UK has fallen now to $1,380 by 1960. The Swiss have actually gone up to 1,787. So now Switzerland is ahead of the UK. Now we want to look at where we are now, 2017. I've got data from IMF, World Bank. Let's take the IMF. Well, the Swiss GDP per capita is $80,000 now. The UK is 39,735. So less than half. Well, let's say roughly half. In 1900, both countries are on a gold standard. The UK was on a gold standard, but the UK had significantly higher GDP per capita, was the wealthiest country in Western Europe. And I'm doing this by comparison because a lot of people, when I just talk about the UK, they say, oh, but back then, you know, there's a lot of poverty in the UK. But in relative terms, the UK was doing a lot better than all the other Western European countries. And now we are where we are. UK GDP is half of the Swiss GDP. And the other thing I wanted to show you, a lot of people, you know, go on about how we need fiat money or else there isn't enough money for the economy to develop. But look what's happened to, this is more of a picture of the chart of the pound since the early 70s. Look what's happened to the pound versus the Swiss franc. So we were almost around 10, almost 11 in the early 70s. And now we are, you know, 125. So you tell me, you know, Switzerland was on a gold standard to 40% gold back until 2000, and look how well their economy is done. I know there's a lot of problems in Switzerland as well, but relatively speaking, I would say Switzerland has, you know, a lot more gold even now than the UK. The UK has 300 tons. I think the Swiss have about just over 1,000 tons. So even off the gold standard, Switzerland is continuing to do better, and its currency, and it dispels the fallacy that, as well, the other fallacy people say, well, sometimes you need war for technological development. You need, you know, a lot of credit for new business. But I would argue Switzerland has been neutral since, well, for 200 years. They haven't been in any wars. They've had sound money for most of the time, and it's one of the most stable, richest countries in the world. So hopefully this will give you, an idea of what sound money can do. Because there's a lot of people, sometimes they say, oh, there's no country anymore that has sound money. But we did have Switzerland until very recently. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steemit, DTube, and on Twitter. I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.